welcome to the Arnold versus Sylvester Stallone, you're breaking stuff now, live show where we rank the top 20 of these titans of 80s cinema, if you want to call it that. These four wonderful schmucks over here are going to try to see who's going to come out on top for those. We are currently streaming live on Facebook, and these will be available on podcasts here shortly thereafter. We are down at Spellbound Magic Shop.
Woo! Give it up for
there you go. Yes,
Yay!
we want to thank Travis, Nye, and Spellbound for hosting us here this evening. Definitely, suggest checking it out. I am losing myself here. So
You got this, Brian.
This is why I don't host things. This is why we have Casey, but y'all kick me out.
You got it.
I know. So Travis did want to have us let you know that he does have some shows coming up in October that you can check out here, called the Magician Among Spirits. You can get those tickets on Facebook, and if you do use promo code BACKLOT, you can get 20% off of those tickets. So with that being said, let these four schmucks here start seeing who's going to come on top. Arnold versus Stallone.
Mm-hmm. Let's do this.
Yeah. We should probably explain the rules of how we're doing this.
Yes,
real quick.
explain.
You want me to explain the rules?
I do. You're the one that made these rules up.
So the rules here are not that hard to figure out. There's 20 movies that are going to be available on this list. 4 players, that means 5 picks per player. This order is a little bit randomized, but basically what the order will say is player A, which in this case is Derek, who drew that spot, will get the number 1 pick and will have 3 picks in the top 10. I will have player B. I get 2 in the top 5, 3 in the top 10 overall. Me and Derek would then have the better of the 4 picks. Down here, Charlie, you will have the number 3 pick, and then Blake will unfortunately have... It's the worst draw, but you still get...
I decide number 1, kind of.
Yeah, you get the second pick, so you get to decide the first one. And each player, along with that, if you guys want to all hold up your vetoes, we let Sam get the shot. Each player will get a veto. That means if they do not like a pick that is played, or if they want to move that movie up higher, this is where you use your veto. We each get one and done. Once you use it, it's gone from the game forever. So that's...
Don't forget the franchise rule.
And then, this is a new rule we introduced just for this show. It is the Rocky Terminator rule, as we call it. That is that we will only have 2 movies per franchise that will be allowed to be on the list. So that means we cannot have 5 Rocky movies. The most we can have is 2. We can't have 3 Terminator movies. You can have 2. That's the max that we can play on this. Does not mean there needs to be 2 from each franchise that is eligible, but that is the rules that we put in place. 2 max per franchise. One last rule that I just thought of. The movies that are played have to have Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone as the top 1 or 2 billed actors. So, for example, the one that we've been using is Spy Kids 3D. Unfortunately,
the ones that you've been using.
Yes, the one that would be number 1 if it was available, but it is not, because Sylvester Stallone is not top billed in that movie. So that is
the worst. It threw off my whole game.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hopefully you have Arnie and Sly movies and not Brendan Fraser movies.
Well, I've been writing down Brendan Fraser movies for 2 weeks, and you guys told me that I had the wrong actor.
Yeah.
It's fine.
That's all right. But yeah, that's all we have, so we're going to kick it off. Let's do a little introduction of each of the players and give our final thoughts. So let's kick it off first with Blake, and then we'll move down the aisle.
Boy, I don't know what you want me to say. One of these guys is the best, I think, action star of all time, but I think the other one has, more hits than the other one. Does that make sense? I think one of them personifies action more than the other, but I think the other one has more better movies. They're just not as good as, the other one's best movies. Mm-hmm. But I'm really curious to see what everybody else, or where movies land for others, because I know I'm going to have a couple of hot takes that might piss some people off. And I'm okay with that, so.
Yeah, we're waiting for it.
Yeah.
Charlie, what are your final
final vows?
Final vows.
I've had
George of the Jungle won't win.
George of the Jungle can't win anymore.
In our hearts, it does.
In our hearts, George of the Jungle is number one. I think you're right on that, Blake. The Arnold and Sly one. I really like the way that you worded that. I think it's also fair to say that these two have been lumped together for a very long time for some reason. And it's not just action movies that we'll be talking about, I think, here. I think we'll have the majority of action movies, but I think we're going to have a few in there that will be tempting for a veto from some of us, too. So I'm excited.
My final thoughts are we will get both Arnie and Sly in drag in this. That's all I got to say.
And maybe Kurt Russell, too. We'll
Hopefully.
see.
Ooh, there you go.
All right. Yeah, I'm ready for this. It's been really exciting to go through these guys' filmography. I know we're going to have some conflicts here, but my hope in all this is that if I can change and you can change, then everyone can change.
Hercules in New York for number one.
All right.
Spoilers.
So let's throw it off to our host, who will introduce who we have at number 20.
At number 20, Mr. Derek gets to start off with the what is the worst of the best?
Oh boy, this is going to get off to an explosive start. I'm just going to tell you
Yes.
that right
All right.
now.
Amen.
Get ready for
Is that why you're already starting with your veto card?
He might veto himself.
I'm handing my veto card and my big
Yep,
U
he's like, I'm
at the same
I already
time.
beat
I'm
this
feeling myself.
I hate myself for doing this.
All right, so number 20 comes in with the Sylvester Stallone absolutely amazing action flick, and I'll just go like this.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
We got Sylvester Stallone's Over the Top.
All right. So Sylvester Stallone is Lincoln Hawk, veteran truck driver who, as the movie starts, is heading to military school where he's hoping to pick up his son Michael for his graduation at the bequest of his wife, who is on her deathbed, in the hopes that Stallone and his son will reconcile and get to know each other. However, standing in the way of this reconciliation is the kid's grandfather, played by Robert Loggia, who is a bazillionaire of some sort. Don't know how he did it, but he basically wants custody of the grandson, but the wife wants Stallone to have him. And so we get a number of arguments about who should have custody of the kid. Ultimately, to make things right, Stallone, who in his spare time is also a professional arm wrestler, heads to Vegas and bets his rig on himself in the World Arm Wrestling Championships.
Yes.
In order to hopefully get enough money to start up his own trucking operation and hopefully be able to support his son in the process. So I want to explain why I'm placing this low. I want this movie to be on the list because I think there's a good amount of nostalgia for this movie. The arm wrestling stuff insanely works. It shouldn't. But the way Stallone does, with, getting in, turn the cat mode is awesome. And to be fair, the moment where he's doing that talking head interview, where he's talking about, when I turn around my head, I flips the switch on and I become a machine. I find that very charming. The reason I'm not placing this higher is because everything else about this movie does not work. I don't let the kid in this movie annoys me to no end. To
Is
the
it
point.
not his own kid, too, in real life?
No.
It's a different movie? Okay.
Yeah.
Arnie does not, or Sly does not have a son.
He does.
Yes, he does.
He does.
Really?
Yeah.
He died.
Has even been in one of his movies.
Yeah.
Yep, he has been in one of the
Okay.
movies. Yep.
So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, basically, the kid kind of annoys me. He's, very prim and proper and whatever, and it's almost like, you really want to fight for this kid, Sly? I'm kidding. And as much as I love Robert Loggia, he is given absolutely nothing to do in this movie. He's not really given much dramatic material to work with against Sly, but the sheer insane power of said arm wrestling sequences, makes me want to get this on the list in some fashion. So, also, by the way, directed by Menahem Golan, who is co-founder of Canon Films.
Oh.
Yeah. Winner takes all, loser takes the fall.
That's right.
Over the top. It has to be on the list. This was in my short stack that I had. I would probably have it a little higher, not much. So 20 is good. 20.
I had mine a little bit. I had over the top on mine. Mine was a little bit higher too, but I'm happy with it being at number 20.
It's not top 10. It's the bottom 10.
Yep. Blake.
I mean, I think this movie sucks. I will say, I think when people look at Stallone, like in like Derek said, in a nostalgia way, like Over the Top is one of those movies that you have to include. There's a couple more that I think will get played that I think are also very, very bad. But in terms of like Stallone's mystique, like they're absolute must-haves on the list. So and I think this is one of them.
It's Rocky with arm wrestle.
Yeah.
It is.
It needs to be on here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I do have to point out the one scene with Over the Top where he drives his rig through the entire driveway to get his son, and no legal ramifications. So, I mean, I think this is a good
Not
way
the
to
80s
kick off the
Charlie,
list.
no.
Yeah.
Not anytime.
Not anytime. Not with Stallone, anyway.
All right, so we've got number 19 coming in with Casey.
Wait.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Would you like a do-over?
No, I do not. Here we go.
Jesus. All right, so coming in at number 19, thanks to Casey, is the Christmas Arnold Schwarzenegger classic of Jingle All the Way.
Yes, Jingle All the Way. It is my favorite of the Schwarzenegger comedies. Sorry, Kindergarten Cop. I grew up on this movie that is, again, we talked about nostalgia with Over the Top. This is pure nostalgia. This stars Arnold Schwarzenegger as every suburban dad from Minnesota, obviously, because we can all relate to that. He is a father to Anakin Skywalker in this movie, young Jake Lloyd. Basically, the setup is that his son wants a Turbo Man doll.
The Terminator doll?
Yeah. That's all he wants for Christmas, and so it is about getting your son the ultimate Christmas gift. So in that way, we can all relate to it in some fashion. There's that present we all want. Besides that, it is unrelatable in every aspect. But what makes this so much fun is Schwarzenegger is he's trying his damnedest to be an everyday person. He's trying to be the everyman. He is obviously a bodybuilder from Austria, so he is not a suburban dad from Minnesota. Phil Hartman plays the next door neighbor who has a massive crush on Arnold's wife, and Phil Hartman is now watching it as an adult. He's the best part of this movie. He's hilarious. He knows, much like him on SNL, he knows how to balance between being the straight man in the scene and then knowing when he needs to switch into the comedy. The scene I'm thinking of is when Arnold calls back home and Phil Hartman's at his house eating his wife's cookies, and he burns his finger on the cookie, and the kids are yelling in the background, "Just your pipe down in there!" And it's just the way Phil Hartman can switch like that is perfect. Sinbad's in this movie, but besides that...
Like how we just ended it. Sinbad's in this movie.
He's not good in this movie. He's doing his stand-up routine throughout the movie. Blake hates this, but that's all right. I love Jingle All the Way. I wanted a Turbo Man doll as a kid, and unfortunately, I don't have the real Turbo Man at home.
This did not make my list. But I'm okay with it being there.
Pretty sure Blake's like, it didn't make mine either.
Yeah. This did not make my list, but I get the nostalgia reason. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I have bigger fish to fry, so I'm not touching this one.
Yeah,
When I see you veto this, it's because I expect you want it up higher, that's why.
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty much why I would be away. But
yeah, I'm pretty much fine with this as well. I mean, it has modest ambitions and it does it just fine. I should also mention this also gives us the much hallowed Red Heat reunion between Schwarzenegger and Jim Belushi as a group of mall Santas. So just
And the Big Show is
Yes,
Santa.
yeah, I was going to say, the first two movies that we had are mentioning also have professional wrestlers in them, in Terry Funk and The Big Show.
Can we keep it going?
I don't know if we...
Probably
Rocky
not.
3, let's go!
All right.
All right, let's
Well,
go.
we are going to keep it going.
Charlie is not a
actually.
pervert, so let's get going to it.
All right, so number 18 with Charlie, we have both of them.
Wait, what? Oh yeah, yes.
Now you get
Now
where you're going. We have the Expendables.
All right. The Expendables is literally just explosions for 2 hours. Very little plot, a lot of action stars. This is... I feel like one of the movies needs to make it on this list. One of the three. And I'm putting the original in there. And I don't think it's in the top 15. I think this would have been my pick no matter what on this one here for you. There's not a whole lot of plot to this. It's a gang of mercenaries that are going after Julia Roberts' brother, and that's about it in that. But it's a popcorn movie. A lot of fun to just sit down, kind of turn your mind off, and I think a lot of these movies. A lot of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone movies are that, but the Expendables really, far and away takes away the cake when it comes to that. So,
Yeah, it's fine. It's not my favorite of the series, but
would you have put? I debated between. I only wanted one. I debated between 1 and 3.
3 is by far my favorite.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
It might make an appearance later.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was super excited when this movie came out in 2010 because it was going to be here are all these action stars together. Certainly one of the most palpable moments, of course, is that 2-minute scene where you have Stallone and Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis in the same frame together. And I wouldn't say it's movie magic, but it's darn close.
It's a Planet Hollywood reunion.
Exactly, exactly. So that was
If you
fun.
want to do some trivia and eat a burger.
And of course, part of it was because it was really fun to see Schwarzenegger on screen again, because this was during his governorship. He got 1 day off of his job to do that scene, so that was very special. I'll admit this is not my favorite Expendables movie either, but I also disagree with Blake, whatever. So, but I figure, we probably would need to have this on the list in some capacity too. So.
One of these needs to be on here. I think it's my least favorite of the three, but
Is it? Okay.
They're interchangeable though.
They're all, yeah.
Yeah, I think the weakest point though is the villain, because the villain gets better in 2 and 3.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you have
Fair point.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I can toss up between 2 and 3 as my favorite, but I expected one of these to be on the list. The first one is fine.
I think the sheer shock of who's all in this movie
Yeah.
initially was kind of the
Yeah.
the whole draw of it, and then the fact that they did give screen time to everybody in that was pretty remarkable. So,
The resurgence of Dolph Lundgren.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with this.
All right, so we got number 17 for Mr. Blake. Oh, why are we so far away? All right, so... Oh, this happened a lot earlier than I thought it would be. So, at number 17, Blake gives us Rocky 4.
Yes, Rocky 4.
Speaking of the Dolph Lundgren.
Okay.
Rocky 4 is a terrible movie. But, again, in the mythos of Stallone, when people look back at Sylvester Stallone, it is has the most iconography of maybe all of his movies. People are always like, is that the one with the Russian? Does he fight the Russian in that one? He fights the Russian in this one. It has an incredible sequence with Apollo Creed getting killed by Dolph Lundgren in this great sequence where James Brown is singing "Living in America," and there's all this, red, white, and blue everywhere. And then, Rocky, could throw the towel in to save his friend, and ends up deciding to go to Russia to fight Ivan Drago. And, this movie is essentially 3 montages of him training, great music, awesome fight at the end. I think when people look back at Rocky, they always think of Rocky 4. And there's a robot in this, too.
We don't want to talk about that. We
why not?
We need to talk about that.
So, Rocky 4 needs to be here, I think.
Because everything's better with a robot.
According to Paulie. I love the Rocky franchise, and I had a lot of debates with myself as to which ones were going to make the list. This surprisingly was not one of the ones that I would have made the list due to our rules, but that was I'm not going to veto it. I'm 100% okay with this being on the list. I maybe would have put it higher, but again, like Blake said earlier, I think we got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm okay with this. So
Yeah, this is. I wrote down 3 movies from this series. This was one of them. I'm glad Blake decided it for me, of which one would make it for sure. Yeah, I love Rocky IV. It's obvious. It's definitely the one that I've seen the most. It is a breezy movie, like Blake said. It's 2 fights and a bunch of training montages. Some great Survivor songs. I love the car scene where he, right after Apollo dies, it's just flashbacks to the entire series, and it doesn't really make any sense. That's fine. It doesn't need to make sense. I just watched it this morning again. And one thing that I took away this time watching it, because I watched the first movie and then this one back to back, is how much Apollo treats the fight with Ivan Drago like he treated the fight with Rocky in the first movie. Because he comes out with the red, white, and blue, I want you, and he dies in the ring this time by not taking something seriously. So it's a nice little connection between the first 2 movies. It is probably, in terms of storytelling and directing, it's probably the worst Rocky movie, but it is number 1 in my heart. I love this movie so much. And it makes this movie is now better because of another movie that has come out in the last few years.
Yeah, I actually, not to be Casey, but I actually watched this movie right before I drove to Spellbound. I mean, I literally watched the I Can Change, You Can Change montage, turned off my TV, and then got in my car. So I'm kind of riding on the high of that. Say what you will about this movie. I mean, this is pretty much Stallone basically embracing the early 80s MTV aesthetic to a hilt. It's extremely stylized. It's, at this point we're a far cry from where this franchise started, but, it's become iconic in its own right. 2 last things. One, for all the music that's in this movie, I'm still very sad that we never got a Gonna Fly Now montage. This is the one installment of the series that does not have that song, and that disappoints me. 2, regarding the robot. Earlier today, I read an article online where Sylvester Stallone is talking about his 35th anniversary director's cut of Rocky IV that's coming out later this year. And one of the things that he said in there is that he is completely cutting out the robot. So, fair warning.
It is. Wrong move, Sly.
Yeah, we haven't brought up that this is the movie that ended the Cold War, so it's very culturally significant.
We also haven't brought up the best line in the whole movie, just, if he dies, he dies. That in itself belongs on the list. So,
Rocky
all right.
Rocky
All right.
IV, yes.
So number 16, we got Charlie with the next pick.
Okay,
He's like, oh shoot, I'm not prepared.
that's all right, because you took my number down.
Better figure out mine then,
All
too.
right.
Yes. So,
What do we got so far on the list?
so far,
So
we've
we-
got number 20 is Over the Top, 19 Jingle All the Way, 18 is The Expendables, and 17 is Rocky IV. So that tells me that so far right now, Sylvester is leading the way 3-1. All right.
We're heading into
Wow,
some-
you are reaching.
Yeah.
You are reaching with this one here, boy.
Yep.
And this is the guy who's not qualified for this debate right now.
You are not qualified for this debate.
All right. At number 16, Charlie plays The Sixth Day.
That's right. That's right. All right, so the 6th day is...
This is a great shot.
The 6th day, Arnold Schwarzenegger, just another guy, okay? Just a... However, we're living in this strangely futuristic world, and where cloning human beings is illegal, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening. There are cops that are getting cloned after they die and then they can recreate those memories. The funniest Michael Rooker death scene in the history of film is in this movie, in my opinion. If you don't go back and just try to find that scene, he gets his foot shot off, and for about 30 seconds, it's just Michael Rooker standing on one leg, going ah ah ah. This is another one that I just recently watched it, and I was actually more impressed with it than I wanted to be. Because because I think about the world and what we were worrying about at the time and where their mindset was here. It was about 2000. We didn't have the war or anything like that, so people were, are we taking science too far? That's the biggest thing that they were worried about at the time, and that's the biggest reason I wanted to put this movie in there was just because of the timing of it coming out here. So, go on, Blake.
I mean, I think this movie sucks too. But I like you, Charlie. To me, it's the top 5 and 10 that matter the most. So you can do whatever foolery you want to do up here. So.
Yeah, and my watches of these movies, this is one I decided to skip because I was not expecting it to be played because I've heard nothing good. And Mr. Ackles has surprised me, so I have nothing else to say.
Just wait, there's more.
Yeah, I am also stunned. I ironically, when I posted my screenshot of horrible movies that I wrote cards for, like Hercules in New York, I have The Sixth Day in that shop because I honestly didn't think this would have a chance today. But you have proved me wrong, and for that I thank you.
Now, okay, because I will, in my defense, here for you, I'm not in charge of where it landed. I'm only in charge of my own picks. I am going to go on record.
You had the 20th spot, by the way.
I did have the 20th spot. No, I did not. No, I did not.
Oh,
no.
You had the 18th spot then.
Yeah, yep.
Over the Expendables.
I would actually. I actually really enjoyed the. There are just sometimes you just need to shut off and watch something completely goofy, and
Charlie,
I had so much fun with it. That's right. But I actually did have a lot of fun watching this movie, and I didn't take it seriously. It was just a fun movie to sit down and watch. So.
The comments. No has been said a lot in the last 5 minutes.
That's
How many times from Andy?
That's
Surprisingly, only one, but he did draw out his comment into 3. The first one was just ellipses. The second one was Charlie, and then the last one was just no, period.
You guys
We're not even in the top 15, guys, so buckle up. We got Blake still.
We got more to come. All right, so number 15 belongs to Casey. All right, there we go. All right, so I feel this is a lot better just than the last one. All right, so number 15.
One had to make the list, okay, guys, and nobody agreed with.
Probably one of my personal favorites of the 80s and the Schwarzenegger films is we have Commando.
Yes, Commando, Arnold Schwarzenegger's answer to Rambo. Everybody hates me now on this show, but that is fine. This is a...
Thank you for this one, Casey. I'm just saying, I just want this on the board, period.
It does. It needs to be on here, but it's not as good as 14 others. This movie is a ton of fun. It is one of the peak Schwarzenegger doing Schwarzenegger. That is what he's doing in this movie, full of one-liners. This is about Arnold, who is basically has to go full Taken and rescue his daughter from this group that has kidnapped her. This is a fun movie, and that's there's not meat to it. It's Arnold doing one-liners and kicking ass, and that's all it needs to be.
His daughter's Alyssa Milano.
Yes, young Alyssa
She's
Milano.
a very young Alyssa Milano.
I like the stuff that she does. She's very intelligent and intuitive of her surroundings, and has obviously learned a lot from her dad in this movie. Yeah, Commando. I want to hear everybody else's thoughts. Here at 15.
Blake's face says, no, you don't.
Blake does not like this list.
This is top 5.
You think so?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, in the opening minutes, Schwarzenegger feeds a deer, and then kills like 3 guys. 30 seconds later, like that's top 5 material for me. Yeah. I mean, he kills literally thousands of people at the end of this movie.
There is a veto. You can
No.
play it higher.
No.
I should explain the
Pete
reason I have it
Schwarzenegger
so
should
low.
be top 5.
But the
right?
reason Schwarzenegger's great, you guys are gonna have to help me with the actor that plays the main villain, because
Dan Hedaya.
Yep.
he does not match up to Schwarzenegger.
He's not good.
No, and
I
that
don't think he's
puts-
supposed to.
But Radon Chong is great.
she is great. Yes.
Derek and I had a conversation before
Yep.
we started that Schwarzenegger always surrounded himself with great female protagonists, and this is one of them. I think.
I think
I
this
agree.
might be my favorites of those. But the villain takes this down so much. I do not believe my dad fighting Arnold Schwarzenegger.
He doesn't fight him though. It's his big henchman that does.
That's who I meant. The final guy.
The
he
bad guy
fights.
from Road Warrior. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. This is disappointing, but
I'm actually with you on this one. Like I wouldn't have put it top 5. I would have put it top 10 though, and very high on that in between that 10 and 6 here for us. But I'm okay with it being here as well. So
Yeah, I would have put this top 10 as well, because when you look at this in the context of Schwarzenegger's whole filmography, this is probably the seminal origin of the Schwarzenegger movie.
Yep.
This is the movie that really established the one-liners, the trying to shoehorn Schwarzenegger into ridiculous roles. Let's not forget here that Schwarzenegger's character's name in this movie is John Matrix. And that is probably the single best character name that we will discuss on this show today. John Matrix. And Alyssa Milano is his daughter, Jenny Matrix. We also have in this movie, like Bill Duke, always giving ominous looks to one of the henchmen. We've got this ridiculous sequence in a shopping mall because for whatever reason, this kicks off Arnold doing tons of action sequences in shopping malls in his movies for some reason.
jingle all the way.
I mean, also tons of explosions. I think this isn't this Joel Silver produced?
yep.
I could be wrong. Also, the
You're
one
never wrong, Derek.
Also, all the one-liners on here. This movie is written by Stephen E. D'Souza, who went on to make such other seminal action classics like Die Hard, and ultimately wrote and directed the Jean-Claude Van Damme Street Fighter. So, a lot of talent here. Again, this is the Rosetta Stone to the rest of the Schwarzenegger filmography, in my opinion, and that's why I would rank. I personally would rank it a bit higher, but it still has to be on the list anyway. So whatever.
Yeah.
I just think he does everything better in other movies we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Who, Schwarzenegger?
Schwarzenegger.
You said it was Pete Schwarzenegger.
Of him doing his stuff? Yeah, but the movie itself is better. The other movies we're going to be talking about.
Okay.
Schwarzenegger himself is probably peak Arnold. The movie itself is not.
Okay.
All right. Number 14 comes in with Derek's next pick. I like it. All right, so the next one here, we have The Running Man.
All right. The Running Man from 1987, directed by the guy who played Starsky on Starsky and Hutch. Kid you not on that. Arnold
Nothing
Schwar-
like the book?
No. Semi-based on the novella from Richard Bachman, the alias of Stephen King. Arnold Schwarzenegger plays Ben Richards, a policeman in the futuristic year of 2017, who, as the movie opens, he's flying a helicopter.
This is my peak year.
And he's being asked to fire upon a bunch of rioting civilians. He refuses to, but ultimately someone does shoot at him, and Ben Richards is framed for the murder of all these folks. So he is sent to a future prison and is ultimately recruited to be on America's #1 TV show, the aforementioned Running Man, a 3-hour weekly extravaganza of survival in which prisoners have to run through a gauntlet of obstacles and a variety of killers to basically win their freedom as a prize. And of course, if they die along the way, That's perfectly fine. Said game show is hosted by actual real-life game show host Richard Dawson, who does a tremendous bang-up job of mixing his game show persona with a very villainous vibe as well. The opponents that Schwarzenegger goes against in this movie, is kind of a who's who of, '80s figures because you've got Jesse the Body Ventura as Captain Freedom, who actually gets to kill Schwarzenegger at the end of this movie in a weird sequence where they fake Schwarzenegger's death. But I just want to mention that because how often does Schwarzenegger get killed in the movie? Hardly ever. So I know there's some others in there. I think, like, was it Professor Torchnaka or something like that? I forget. But ultimately, I kind of like the cheesy vibe of this movie. I hate to say it's prescient, but, you know, it is kind of ridiculous. This is right before, like, American Gladiators kicks off. You can kind of see that whole spandex obstacle course vibe and all of this, which kind of really appeals to me. You've also got some weird futuristic stuff. Mick Fleetwood of Fleetwood Mac shows up as the leader of the resistance, who might actually be Mick Fleetwood. We don't know about that. Dweezil Zappa is in there too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Maria Conchita Alonso is kind of Schwarzenegger's female co-lead in all this. Yaphet Kotto as a fellow cop. I just kind of like this vibe. You know, it's cheesy late '80s Arnold. Probably in the grand scheme of things, probably should rank higher than something like Commando, but it is something I want to put on this list because it is just cheesy fun at the end of the day. So, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it's great. I love this movie growing up as a kid, but I watched it about 2 months ago, and it's like production values aren't that great.
I'd agree.
And so it feels really dated and kind of, like you said, cheesy and not in a good way. I love Maria Conchita Alonso, and I love my favorite sequence is when they're at the airport, and she kind of like rats him out, and he takes off running, and like she sees just like how much brute force he has running on the airport tarmac. I love that sequence. But yeah, it's ultimately it's okay.
I've got no thoughts on Running Man. And that's simply like, this was one that was on the list to rewatch. I know I saw it when I was far too young to see it, and I just could not recall it as well, so I just can't add my 2 cents on this one.
Yeah, I was expecting this to be on the list. I was not going to play it. I think it's middle of the road, Arnold. It's fine. It's not great. A lot of it does not hold up. But a positive, we have another wrestler on the list. So
That's right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's all that matters.
Probably won't be the last time we see Jesse the Body Ventura.
I don't think
What? All right, so we got number 13 for Charlie.
Number 13.
Your next pick.
Look back at
We're gonna start running out of those picks there, Charlie.
Want to run it down while Charlie's...
We got Over the Top, Jingle All the Way, The Expendables, Rocky IV, The Sixth Day, Commando, and Running Man. So Schwarzenegger has taken the lead.
Jeez. Yes.
There it is.
What happened to the love for the Stallone?
He'll be back.
Be back.
He'll be back.
All right, so number 13. Speaking of the Stallone, hanging in there with Cliffhanger.
Yes.
I'm going to put Cliffhanger. Yep. I don't think Cliffhanger's top 10. I do think it's top 20. So Cliffhanger, all about a rock climbing rescue crew. They never really mention where they're at, or if they did, I missed it. Somebody,
Isn't by Denver? or
it
something?
could very well, yeah.
It takes place in Denver.
Could be. Anyway, so what the whole opening sequence sets up this entire plot line. That these guys are on a mission to rescue somebody, and Stallone goes in for the rescue and drops a woman down a mountain, in spite of his best efforts. Stallone leaves for a year and comes back, what is presumably to get his stuff, and winds up on a wacky mission because a plane crashes in the mountain, and John Lithgow is on a plane heist where they stole an FBI plane. And now, and the rest of the movie is them trying to get down the mountain without being killed by everybody. I think this movie is just a ton of fun, and you don't get many action movies that are in snow, aside from like Rocky IV with the training sequences, but this is like all based in the mountains. There's a really great fight scene. I forget the actor's name. I'll look it up later, but he has a really fantastic fight scene within a cave in there too.
Leon.
Yep. Yeah, and it's I absolutely adore this movie. I think it's so much fun. So
This would have been top 10 for me.
Would it?
But,
Okay.
I think as far as maybe Stallone, this is like all the best action sequences he had are in this movie. So and probably the best villain too, off the top of my head. John Lithgow was incredible. It was kind of fun to watch John Lithgow go from this to
Third Rock from the Sun.
You
Yeah.
know, yeah. I really like this movie a lot. I wish it was higher, but
Yeah, I think this, alongside another Stallone movie, hopefully we talk about, has the two best Stallone villains. Lithgow is great in this movie. I love it. We did a Stallone episode about a year ago, and I got a gush over Cliffhanger then, and it sounds like you got to rewatch it recently.
Did. Yeah, that was really fun.
It holds up surprisingly really well for when I watched it back about a year ago. It held up remarkably well. It's really great. The action scenes are all really well done. Maybe my favorite Rennie Harlan movie, perhaps. But yeah, it's great. Michael Rooker is great as his sidekick.
And he's not a bad guy in this. That's the other, like, Michael Rooker, I picture him as a bad guy in every movie, but in this movie he plays the buddy to Stallone. So
great sidekick in this movie. Yeah, Cliffhanger has to be top 20.
Yep, I mean, I love this movie too. Again, you guys all gabbed on about Lithgow. I can't complain about that. I would honestly venture to say that the opening sequence of this movie is the best thing that Rennie Harlan's ever directed. It's a masterclass, and of course it led to the infamous parody of this scene at the beginning of Ace Ventura 2 When Nature Calls. So just had to throw that out there. And of course, you know, a lot of great use of like practical effects and all this stuff. You know, it's kind of got the benefit of, you know, that early 90s timing where everything was about to become all CGI driven, but they're still able to mount a very elaborate movie like this, you know, with like the whole plane tethering heist sequence and all that stuff. It's very elaborate, but I like it a lot, so I'm good at this.
We have a question from a commenter. Dodie Orth asked if you were watching this on Laserdisc.
I was not watching this on Laserdisc as much as I would love to. It's actually on Hulu right now.
God's chosen format.
Yes, God's chosen format. I should have been. You're right. To Dodie, I'm wrong. So not about the 6th day though.
yeah.
And I would like to point out that y'all have not ever barely even looked at your vetoes at this point yet here. Like, I keep hearing things about, my top 10 to veto, to bring them up, and nobody's acting on them yet. Are you guys that concerned what your top 10 is going to look like?
We're talking about my childhood here, so yes.
None of these would be in my top 10.
Yeah, but you're not, but those words have happened. This would be in my top 10, I'm just saying. All right, so number 12 is Mr. Blake.
Let's see how much hate I get for this.
Maybe a little bit. All right, so number 12, Blake picks the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jesse Ventura classic Predator.
Yeah, Predator. Not a good movie, but again, in the Arnold Schwarzenegger pantheon of iconography, it needs to be on the list. This movie has a tremendous opening, and then it kind of just like slowly gets more and more boring, and then it picks up at the end when Schwarzenegger goes one-on-one. But I just don't think this movie is that great, but I understand why people love it. You know, like Kim and Carl Weathers do the bro handshake at the beginning, and they're testing their might. A lot of like masculinity in this, you know, maybe to a fault. And after they attack that base in the middle of the movie, like it just kind of just nosedives for me. So yeah, this deserves to be up here, but this is kind of fine where it's at. So
I think Charlie wants to wait to the end.
I think me and Charlie will echo the opposite of what Blake said.
Okay, I just want to say one more thing really quick. Sorry. A lot of people look at like the Schwarzenegger, like big muscular brawn, you know, baby oil, sweating Schwarzenegger. As
That's
this
all
movie,
we can look
no,
at most of the
but like
time.
people think of this movie, and for me it's Commando. Like that is the big burly Schwarzenegger imagery that I like, and I think this movie isn't that great in terms of that. So
Since I played Commando, this is the better version of Commando. It has the peak. It has the Arnold one-liners. It starts off as basically a Commando style movie, turns into a frickin' alien invasion movie where Arnold fights the most bad MFer out in the galaxy. The
One
Predator.
ugly MFer.
One ugly
Yeah.
MFer. Yeah, this is top 5 for me.
I would just like to point out that Andy thinks it's top 5 as well.
this is not top 5.
This is top 2 Arnold for me. But I'm fine leaving it here because I don't think it will get anywhere higher. I love Predator. Predator is one of my favorite Arnold movies. One of my favorite action movies ever. John McTiernan knows how to direct the hell out of an action movie. He will show up later on this list, which is fine if that movie's higher. But yeah, I love this movie. It starts off with this just giant team, and then they start getting picked off one by the Predator. Yeah, I love this movie very, very dearly. Yeah, Carl Weathers gets to be on here again, though. That's
Yes, it is.
You have it there, Charlie.
I know
Use
I
it.
do, but at the same time, it's like it's so close to that top 10. Like, am I willing to get rid of it just so it can go up, a few spots potentially?
Does Blake hate it enough to not let it go any higher?
I don't hate it.
It ends up at 11.
Yeah, that's kind of where.
I'm very good for 11.
Yeah.
True. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, that's kind of where
It'd be a waste.
I'm at with that. Is it like?
But then I could veto it.
Yeah.
It's in the top 10. Don't do it.
I don't think. Yeah,
listen.
I don't
That's
think I
a bad
can.
streak.
Yeah, that's. I personally think that
It's on the
this is in the top 5 as well. And I think I've seen Dre's feeling the same way as I am on this one, but
I'm sure that
just like the classic, like the heat vision that you see with Predator, him covering himself in mud and like setting up traps. I'm gonna keep it there though. I'm gonna fight on, live to fight another day.
It has some of the best Schwarzenegger lines too.
Stick around.
Stick around. Get to the chopper.
Yep.
Yeah.
None of these lines are better
Ain't
than
got time to bleed.
Commando.
Yeah, I mean, I would have placed this higher too. I mean, there's a lot I respect about this movie. I mean, a movie like this that has the gall to do the mid-movie genre switch that it does, it's impressive. And it's to the credit of the movie, and especially the casting, that I would just watch a movie about Dutch and his team of mercenaries doing missions. Because it's not just him, but you've also got Carl Weathers joining the ride, Jesse Ventura, Bill Duke, Shane Black, the action writer of the 80s and 90s. I would love to see that. And, and the way it just kind of gives you these hints of the Predator mythology as well, just giving you enough to figure things out, but obviously hints at something more to come that other movies would flesh on or flesh out to middling results. But, I'm not going to make a big fight of it, I mean, as long as it's on the list in some capacity.
That's kind of where I'm at. Is I don't know
It's on
if
the
this is
list.
worth the fight. So
One of the few times the sequel is better than the original.
Strong
Whoa.
words. This is one of the series where I just don't get why Arnold has not come back to this one. He'll do.
I thought
Yeah.
they were gonna do another one, and then
I thought
like
he was
maybe
going
like 15 years ago or something.
Yeah.
There was talk.
I always thought I heard a rumor that they were hoping to get like Arnold appear at like the very end of the 2010.
Yeah, that's what it was. Okay. Perfect. I'm glad you all like the placement.
All
We love it.
right, number 11. We have Blake
Back to back.
back to back.
You get double hot takes here.
No.
Predator 2.
No.
Terminator Salvation.
All right.
That's
No.
amazing.
Doesn't count.
Nope. Terminator Salvation. We have number 11. We have Nighthawks.
Nighthawks with Sylvester Stallone and I believe it's Billy D. Williams, the great Billy D. Williams.
Yeah, it is.
They played New York cops who are sort of tasked with hunting down I believe it's a German terrorist, Rutger Hauer, incomparable Rutger Hauer from Blade Runner, plays Wolfgar, who is this European terrorist who's blowing up all these places, kind of like the Jackal was in the 70s. And he makes his way over America, and Stallone and Billy D. Williams are hired to sort of like be the eyes on the street to go after, they have a certain set of skills. They can find people that maybe aren't conventional methods that police use. And it's basically a 90-minute thriller where Stallone and Billy D. Williams are hunting down Rutger Hauer through New York City. The last half hour of the movie is this standoff on this hanging tram, and you get to see Stallone in drag, which is awesome. Twice, yeah. And there is an incredible sequence in a discotheque where Stallone and Billy D. Williams are kind of just surveying the crowd and this really thumping dance music, and all of a sudden Stallone sees him and they lock eyes, and then they're slowly zooming out of their eyes and the music's getting louder, and then all hell breaks loose. This movie rules. I can't believe this is not discussed more in Stallone's filmography, and I just wanted to gush about it.
Nice. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. I saw that it was on Netflix, and that was one of the ones that I just ran out of time here for. And I've heard nothing but good things on this one here, so I'm 100% okay with it being on the list here. So
yeah, I love this movie. This movie is great. When we were talking about Cliffhanger with Stallone villains, this is probably the best Stallone villain with Rutger Hauer.
Oh,
it's great. I love it. Like Blake said, the final sequence on that tram is great. Stallone and drag in the final sequence is so much fun.
Yeah.
This is like a 90-minute chase through underground New York, which I'm a sucker for. That late 70s, early 80s, just gross, grimy New York.
Me too. I love
this
it.
Is that. I love this movie. I probably would have put it top 10, but we're close enough. 11 is a good spot for this, and him with Billy D is a fun change of pace. We're used to see him with Carl Weathers, obviously in the Rocky movies. Him with Billy D, they have really good chemistry, and this was right after Rocky, so this is when Stallone is really hitting his stride, and I think this definitely hits a tone more akin to Rocky, the first movie, than it does to 80s action Stallone.
Yeah, I watched this movie for the first time just a few days ago, much to Blake's surprise, and I really, really liked it. It's very tight, it's very tense. It works so well that you don't question the fact that it seems like Stallone's most effective crime-fighting method is dressing in drag. Also, what else can I say? For roughly half this movie, Billy D. Williams is wearing a Superman T-shirt, which I kind of enjoyed. This is also, per my research, Rutger Hauer's first Hollywood movie. This is a year before he does Blade Runner, and boy, he just comes storming on the scene. And I kind of also like the balance between the two characters. It's not entirely lopsided like Stallone. You're kind of following both these guys on their own tracks, and how they end up colliding, which I think kind of makes for a more intriguing movie overall. I also think it's kind of, it's also perfectly positioned. Again, this is 1981, right before Stallone's ego, I think, starts ramping up. And I don't think even a few years later, he would have been able to do a movie like this. So it's just a perfect timing thing, all concerned. So glad this is on the list.
And I would also like to point out, if I'm doing my math correctly here, that actually evens it up 5 and 5 for the top, or the bottom of the 20 for Stallone and Sylvester and Arnold there. And I also want to point out here a nice little note that Andy put in the chat here. How's he put this here? Looking for a new co-host whose name rhymes with break. Anyone?
I love you, Andy.
So before we get to the top 10, should we run through these and read off some more funny comments that we have found? At our halfway point.
Yeah, well,
All of Blake's hate.
it's just all hate. Number 20, we got Over the Top. Number 19, Jingle All the Way. Number 18, The Expendables. 17 is Rocky 4. Number 16, The Unusually Picked Sixth Day. Number 15, Commando.
it's an unusual movie.
Number 14, The Running Man. Number 13, Cliffhanger. 12 is Predator, and we round out the bottom 10 with Nighthawks at number 11.
As far as comments go, one of my favorites so far has been Andy. Early on in the chat, I can't quite find it, but he said, much like It's Always Sunny, Charlie is the wild card here.
You can't say the other part.
It's a PG show.
It is
lot of whats and no's and veto it when Blake played Predator.
It's so close to the top 10. Like, I would have put it, like, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
From Robert Mailing, oh my God, Sixth Day. Don't know if
taken
that was
either
good
way.
or bad, so, take that with a grain of
You're
salt,
welcome,
Charlie.
Robert. You're welcome.
And
Don't, me? Sam.
It was for Sam.
Oh, okay.
We ready to jump
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
top
I
10,
am, yeah.
boys?
Yes.
Get your veto cards ready.
I don't think they're gonna be used.
Stop being. Why are you guys playing this game so safe?
I don't think they're gonna be
Because we know what happened last time you guys did something like this.
That's why I'm not on the panel this time.
used. Who's up?
All right, number 10 is Derek.
All right.
Derek provides us, the James Cameron Love True Lies.
All right. Arnold Schwarzenegger is Harry Tasker, who in the real world.
Doesn't sound like a real name.
Do any Arnold names sound like real names? His own name doesn't sound like a real name.
Yeah, right.
All right. Arnold Schwarzenegger is Harry Tasker, who, to his wife Helen and their child, played by a very young Elijah Dushku, is just a boring, mild-mannered computer salesman. But in reality, Arnold Schwarzenegger is an elite international super spy who, as we see in the opening scene of this movie, infiltrates a luscious mansion party, woos and then dances with Cassandra herself, Tia Carrere, and causes some big explosions. Schwarzenegger works for the task force's boss is Charlton Heston with an eye patch. His buddy is Tom Arnold, giving top-tier comic relief in the van. Yes, the Tom Arnold.
I know.
Because when I think
Arnold's
James
name is
Cameron
mentioned,
films,
I'm
I
just
think
like,
Tom Arnold.
hey.
Anyway, while Arnold Schwarzenegger is hunting down, some Middle Eastern terrorists, because this is the 90s, so they obviously have to be the villains, he gets word that his wife, Helen, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, might be having an affair. And so Arnold Schwarzenegger begins using all his spy equipment and tactics and whatever to hunt down the guy who might be the adulterer, and ultimately comes across played by Bill Paxton, who himself is a used car salesman who is pretending to be a super spy to Jamie Lee Curtis because he recognizes that Helen's life is very boring and wants to make life more exciting for her. And so, long story short,
With a new Ford Focus.
long story short, both worlds collide in spectacular, grandiose fashion because this is a James Cameron movie. At the time, this was the most expensive movie ever made. So that's I get ridiculous sequences like Arnold riding a horse through a hotel and off the roof of said hotel. You get the scenes of like Arnold Schwarzenegger hanging on to Jamie Lee Curtis while she dangles off a helicopter, and then of course Arnold flying a Harrier jet. All sorts of ridiculous stuff like that. Just it's large. The fact that it's this large scale, because again it is James Cameron and he tries to work on the biggest canvas possible. Meant that I want to at least get this on this list in some fashion, because and of course I think it also works very well as a comedy. Maybe not necessarily because of Arnold, but because everybody else is really giving up their game. Jamie Lee Curtis, doing fun stuff, especially the whole hotel sequence. Bill Paxton being sleazy as heck. It's fantastic. So, yeah, thoughts.
Am I always first?
You're not always first. Casey looked over at me, and I think Derek did a great job of summing it up. I don't think I have anything else
This
to
is
say.
top 5 Arnold for me. Probably the best action sequences James Cameron's ever put together. Once there's the sequence Derek was talking about of the movie where it's sort of like Jamie Lee Curtis sort of takes over the plot is a great meditation on trying to like spice up a marriage in a way, whether it's, you know, they know it or not. And then once Jamie Lee Curtis is kidnapped, the movie kicks into overdrive, and it's just an hour of spectacular action. I'd have it higher, but top 10 is where it should be. So.
And who would have thought we'd have a movie with 2 Arnolds in it?
I get it.
Ryan's hosting, everyone.
Yeah, this movie's great. Obviously, top 10. This was a first-time watch for me. I had never seen True Lies before. This is definitely going to go in my rotation of top-tier Arnold rewatch movies. Yeah, True Lies is a blast. Tom Arnold, the other Arnold in this movie, is really good. He's a lot of fun.
The other Arnold.
The other Arnold.
The other Arnold.
Roseanne's ex-wife, you know, or ex-husband, about the same. Yeah, this is a great movie. One of the best James Cameron movies. I think we'll see a lot of James Cameron in the top 10. So this being at number 10 makes sense, and I think will set the tone for the last 9 picks. Yeah.
All right, so Casey, you actually get to lead off with number 9. Make this worthwhile.
I only have 3 picks left.
Only 3 picks.
Only 3.
Only 3.
Come on.
I gotta find it.
You should have thought about this. All right. So, Casey at number 9 brings in Rambo, First Blood, Part 2.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. Charlie has the novelization of it.
The erotic novelization.
It is
Yes.
very erotic.
Because when we think of Rambo, we think of Fabio.
That's right.
It's the same cover as any Fabio book.
It really is. I mean, check out the chest. I mean, never skip chest day. Am I right, Dre? Am I going to read something?
I don't know.
Yes.
Just read one sentence.
Read one sentence.
One
Okay.
sentence.
With profound contentment, immersed in the purity of a perfect, timeless Zen moment, Rambo swung the heavy sledgehammer up from behind him.
I am almost as sweaty as Stallone in this movie. I love the Rambo movies, all of them. This is probably my favorite of the big action Rambo movies. It never stops. It is nonstop action. It ends with Stallone just gunning down hundreds of people at a time. Against Stallone, he already has ended the Cold War on our list, but again, he'll end it again in this movie. That's fine. He can do it twice. Only Stallone can do it. Yeah, this is where Rambo becomes the Rambo we all now know in pop culture. The bandana, the sweaty, oily muscles. The jumping in jets and tanks and everything, killing hundreds of people. He is no longer the guy running through the woods hunting cops because they're after him. He is now just straight up Stallone is the action star. Yeah, Blake had mentioned that Cliffhanger has the best Stallone action. I argue Rambo and all of them has the best Stallone action. Yeah, Rambo First Blood Part 2 is probably my second favorite out of this series. And we will see Rambo again.
Will we?
Yes.
Casey and I have gushed about how much we love Stallone already on this podcast. Like, I am 100% okay with this. I actually, when I was putting together my personal list, I did not put First Blood Part 2 on the list, simply because of the rules that we have here.
We get 2.
Yeah, I know. But, there are different franchises that I think deserve a little bit more recognition than Rambo. And this is... I love it. Just sweaty, oily blood.
Yes.
Like, tons of blood. I mean, it's awesome. So.
We haven't even mentioned that Stallone covers himself in mud and comes out of a wall of mud
Yes.
to slice someone's throat. Yeah, this movie's great. I don't have much to add.
There's not a plot
It's
to
like-
it. It's
Yeah.
his old
Arnold Troutman.
Yeah.
I think this came out the same year as Commando,
Yes.
and it almost feels like those two movies were competing to get these guys shirtless
sweaty.
and sweaty and killing as many people as possible. And I would love to see the body count compared to the two, but I'd be willing to bet that this one has a higher body count. But Yeah, it's great. Great movie. James Cameron wrote it.
Yeah, although in my research, Stallone basically denounced everything that Cameron added to the movie, basically saying, yeah, Cameron's a great guy, but I hated everything he did for the script. So, kid you not.
James Cameron wrote this, The Terminator, and Aliens all at the same time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep.
It's insane.
Isn't it? He had like 3 typewriters, and he was literally like in a chair swiveling between the.
Yep.
Or is that
Something,
a rumor? Maybe?
something like that. There's a
Either way, that's the way I
yeah,
see him doing
yeah.
it.
Swivel chair.
Swivel chair.
Swivel chair.
Yeah, I mean, Casey put it perfectly when he said, this is the movie that created the Rambo that we know. I mean, it is a far cry from First Blood, but, it basically takes it in the direction where, as The Onion eloquently puts it, this is the movie in which Rambo re-won Vietnam for us. So there's that. And of course, there's some ridiculousness to it, when Rambo says, do we get to win this time? And so be it. I mean, I'm perfectly fine with this being, of all the Rambo sequels, that are there, I would put this one on there too, so.
There's just a great sequence at the end where he's just shooting computers. Like it
Yeah.
is nonsense.
Yeah.
But it's great.
Oh, well, by the way, I also have to mention the 2 quasi-baddies in the movie. Charles Napier as kind of the office pencil pusher who just, gives Rambo a hard time. And then, of course, Martin Cove coming right off of Karate Kid to be another evil henchman in this, so.
And I must say, based on what I'm reading here, your reading skills must be top notch there, Charlie. Because
I read that really sexy.
Yeah. Andy's response is, I could almost see Stallone glisten with that sentence.
Well, there's more to come, Andy.
We will eventually record the audio.
Zoom in on these eyes. Zoom in on these eyes.
I can't zoom.
Just look really closely into the
Your
camera.
potential is fading.
Just come in closer.
You want to hear more?
Sit down. All right, Blake, you get number 8. How are you gonna top that?
Trust me, I top of this.
Son of a gun. All right. Thank you, Blake. I'm appreciating that you're playing this. All right, number 8. We have the Stallone wonderful movie, Demolition Man.
Yeah, Demolition Man is a great movie that essentially makes fun of all of Stallone and Arnold's career, essentially. It takes place in 1997. Stallone is hunting the wonderful Wesley Snipes, who plays Simon Phoenix, one of the worst, not the worst, like he's a really bad dude. He blows up a bus full of school kids. And the punishment for Wesley Snipes and for Stallone is to be frozen alive and
Your potential is Turn down your volume, Derek.
Hold on. Continue.
okay. So they're frozen in a prison sentence, I guess, and 40 years in the future.
I think we just watched it. Yes, I was going to say, I thought 2032.
It's like
Yeah,
32.
yeah.
Okay.
2032.
It's in the future, and
A future where we don't know how to wait.
there's no violence.
He doesn't know how to use the seashells.
There's no swearing. You really can't drive a car anymore. Pop songs are now radio advertisements, and
The oldie
Jingles.
station was
yeah,
like
jingles.
It was
All of a sudden-
old jingles.
all of
yep.
a sudden, Wesley Snipes is up for parole, and he escapes, and he's killing everybody. And the only way you stop Wesley Snipes is you unfreeze Sylvester Stallone. And it's basically Stallone sort of like in the future being himself, but the way the movie portrays everything, it's sort of reflecting on like Stallone's filmography or even action movies as a focus. And so there's no violence, there's no swearing, and Stallone's trying to like reconcile all this while trying to figure out how to catch Wesley Snipes, who does not play by the rules. And I mean, Wesley Snipes really hams it up. This is sort of, I believe it's the year before Sandra Bullock did Speed, and I think this is just a movie star. You know, like you see a movie and you're like, wow, that girl is gonna, or not girl, but like that actress, she's gonna go somewhere. And like, this is that performance. And the next year she did Speed, which I wish we could talk about today because I love Speed. But she gives a great performance. Rob Schneider, it's a really funny performance in this as well. Yeah, I think this movie slaps really hard.
I I'm 100% on the same page. You forgot to mention that every restaurant in the future is Taco Bell.
Yes.
Stallone, it's a great, futuristic Stallone movie. Wesley Snipes steals the show in this movie, though. I mean, he is he's the perfect sleazy bad guy. And I feel like, given the timing that this movie came out, it was probably very much based off of what the perception of Dennis Rodman was at the time. It's
possible.
What year did this movie come out?
93.
So I think I actually think this was a lot from. I had just watched a lot of The Last Dance. I think Rodman took what Wesley Snipes was doing in this movie and applied it to his hairstyle, his mannerisms. I think that's what
it's
it
very
was set
possible.
up in that.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah, it was. But
He acts just like him.
yeah, this movie's fantastic. This was going to be my next pick, actually. So I'm not going to veto this whatsoever. I'm happy with where it's at 8 or 7. So
I would also like to point out that we have not brought up that in this universe, Schwarzenegger was president.
that's
good,
right.
That's a good,
Yeah.
that's a good point.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love this movie. And Casey, how do you feel
sorry.
about this?
This movie sucks. I'm not going to veto it. I don't like this movie. It's a great Wesley Snipes movie. It's a terrible Stallone movie. Rob Schneider is insufferable in this movie. Sandra Bullock is terrible in this movie. She gets better in speed. But yeah, I do not like Demolition Man. There's some cahoots going on. Maybe just a water cahoots. But yeah,
You want to slap Casey for that?
yeah, this is not a good movie. I don't like it very much, but I understand that everybody else on this table probably does. We haven't heard from Derek yet, but I assume it was in his hand. But he also had Hercules in New York in your hand.
Well, I had this in here legitimately.
Okay.
That's his dummy card.
I'm impressed by I consider this mostly a comedy in a good way. Because it is a very ridiculous picture of the future, and I kind of enjoy it for that. Again, I think Snipes is doing god tier villain work. I really like Bullock's performance because she's given kind of the most difficult thing to do, which is just explain, here is how I'm the 90s expert, so here's why things are different in the 90s than they were in 2032. And it's very tricky, but she is very earnest in her portrayal here, and I pretty much reflect Blake's thoughts, in terms of you can see her star power building here, and it's just about to go into full throttle with speed. So, yeah, that's great.
It's about to go into cruise control.
Boo, boo.
This is the guy
That's worth a view.
Yeah.
I would just like to point out, Casey, that
Yes.
Andy said bad take not just once but twice. Like literally commented it twice.
Wow. This movie sucks. So
Sorry, Andy. That's his response.
that's my response.
Maybe Andy just hit enter a couple too many times. All right, so number 7, we have Charlie giving us his next pick.
Burn it down, Charlie.
I don't think you'll be okay.
All right, Charlie is taking us on a magical trip with Schwarzenegger to Mars in Total Recall.
What number are we at?
7.
Yeah. Okay. Is that where you're at? Okay. I knew that.
Yes.
This one didn't make my personal top 5. I'm sorry. I get the argument. So in this world that Schwarzenegger lives in, you can take a vacation, if you will, by setting yourself up with in a machine, and it takes your mind to these vacations. And one of the choices is you can be a spy. So Sylvester Stallone, or I'm sorry, why do I keep doing that today?
This is your favorite.
I know he is my favorite, but Arnold Schwarzenegger is just a normal blue collar guy who wants some adventure in his life, and he takes this trip, and the machine malfunctions, and now he's a spy. But the cool, you never really find out if Schwarzenegger was actually a spy or if it was just the vacation that he was on. Yeah, this movie, for the 80s, I mean, the effects that everything happened, I think that the eyes bulging out of Schwarzenegger's head is iconic for movies. When this was one of the first Schwarzenegger movies, aside from a different franchise which we haven't mentioned yet, that I saw with Schwarzenegger in it, and for me it's a standout. But not having seen some of the other stuff, not quite in the top 5 for me personally. But that's where I'm going to play it at number 7.
Blake, I think definitely thinks this needs to be higher.
Yeah.
I do too. I love Total Recall. I just recently rewatched it. This has some weird body horror in it. It has some great sci-fi in it. I don't buy that Schwarzenegger hates his life because he's married to Sharon Stone. Why do you need to escape? I don't get that, but that's fine. That's fine. I can forgive that for the story and the ride that we're taking on in this. Yeah, this is one of the best Schwarzenegger where he doesn't have to rely on one-liners completely. He has some great ones. See you at the party, Richter.
That's the best Schwarzenegger one-liner ever. Yeah.
It's definitely top 5 Schwarzenegger one-liners. It's great. I love Total Recall. Paul Verhoeven's one of his masterpieces. I'll let Blake and Derek gush about it as well.
I think this is the best Schwarzenegger performance ever. It's nice to see him not rely on being like this big muscular guy. He's legit like confused, doesn't know what's happening, and at times is overpowered. And it's nice to see him not be this big guy who is unstoppable. I think the movie's pretty clear about what is happening, but that's neither here nor there.
There's some mystery to it, but I'm with you that by the end
I think the very last shot tells you
out.
everything you need to know.
Yeah.
But man, I think this is Paul Verhoeven's best movie. I wish it was higher.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a movie that's working on all cylinders. Everything that it goes to create this vision of Mars. The landscapes, the miniatures, the creature effects, the makeup effects, all this working in even the elaborate, fake Arnold heads. A lot of very hard work going into here. Again, this is right before the pre-CG era that Arnold ushers in, basically, just a little bit later. But also, just everything working in concert. The whole sci-fi premise of it all. As I'm surprised Blake didn't mention the Jerry Goldsmith score, which is a banger. Very tense. It's just, I personally was probably going to place this, like top 3 myself.
Me
but,
too. Yeah.
Okay. But it is what it is. And Charlie had his methodology for it, so I
And
won't
there's still a
complain.
Vita.
Is it is it Cueto? Is the
Quado.
Quado? That itself is it's kind of out of left field in this movie. It just happens.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, this was left over from Cronenberg was going to be doing this at one point, and I think that was something that was left, and it does look like something out of a Cronenberg movie. It's kind of out of left field, but I love it because I love body horror stuff. And this has, it has a girl with 3 boobs, so it sets it up.
So when they kind of like do like the whole Oscar nomination process of like what movies should get awards, they have like what's called like a bake-off, and certain movies move on from one group of movies that gets voted on, and then it gets whittled down to like 3 or 4 or whatever. And so when they did the best visual effects for this year, Total Recall had a unanimous vote where everyone picked it, and they decided to give it a best achievement or a special achievement Oscar for its effects. Okay. So that almost never happens, and I think we all agree that it's pretty incredible effects in this movie.
I myself personally feel that there's a great performance by a robotic cab in this
Yes.
film. How does nobody bring up Johnny Cab? I'm just saying.
And I also want to mention Rachel Ticotin is phenomenal in this movie.
All right, so number 6, we have Derek's next pick.
Is this the only time we're going to see Sharon Stone on the list? I hope so.
She's only in one other.
Well,
she's only in one other one that I can think of. Yeah.
All right, so we have the strange film that it is, and absolutely loving film that I have before this here is Last Action Hero.
All right, Arnold Schwarzenegger is Arnold Schwarzenegger, the actor who plays Jack Slater, star or the lead character of the much anticipated Jack Slater franchise. As this movie begins, we watch the climactic moments from Jack Slater 3, in which Jack Slater is facing off against the Ripper, Tom Noonan, with his little kid in tow. Tragic things happen, but we don't get to see that because the projection fades out because we're watching young little Danny Madigan, played by Austin O'Brien, watch the movie at his super dilapidated, run-down New York City theater. Danny Madigan loves Arnold Schwarzenegger and specifically Jack Slater, and so when his projectionist buddy Nick tells him that he can watch Jack Slater 4 when they're checking the print at the theater, he is all excited. When he gets there that night, said projectionist gives him a magic ticket that was given originally by Harry Houdini. And when they tear that ticket, it enables some special magic that during the course of Danny watching Jack Slater 4, he is magically transported into the film itself and becomes Jack Slater's buddy, running through the various over-the-top action misadventures that they go through. Ultimately, they cross paths with a bunch of villains, including Anthony Quinn and his henchman, who ultimately becomes the villain, played by Charles Dance, doing a great Alan Rickman in Die Hard type impression. Ultimately, Charles Dance gets a hold of this magic ticket and goes back into the real world. And so Danny and Jack Slater follow them into New York City, where they try to track him down, ultimately confronting them at the premiere of Jack Slater 4, where Jack Slater meets Arnold Schwarzenegger for a fun little scene. Ultimately, I probably said too much, but long story short, the reason I want to have Last Action Hero is, we're a group of movie lovers, and Last Action Hero is, a tribute to the action adventure genre, in its many ridiculous aspects, from the super glossy police station to the fact that every woman in this world looks like a supermodel, to the fact that Arnold Schwarzenegger can't say a certain F word without this movie getting an R rating. It's very endearing. For 1993, this was a very ambitious movie in trying to actually get meta humor of this nature through, let alone in what was intended to be one of the biggest summer blockbusters of that year. I don't think it succeeds on all those fronts, but I think it achieves its objectives to a fine extent. A lot of fun jokes abound, a lot of fun cameos abound, everything from, like Jean-Claude Van Damme and MC Hammer showing up at the premiere, to Ian McKellen as Death, to one shot that contains both Robert Patrick as the T-1000 and Sharon Stone as her Basic Instinct character. It's a movie that pulls out all the stops. And I know there's a lot of love in this group for this movie, and that's why I wanted to at least have it in this list in some fashion.
Yeah, this movie does for action movies what Scream did for horror movies. This was a first-time watch, and I feel bad for that because this is a great movie. I love Last Action Hero. It takes the Arnold formula that we all know and love and flips it, but yet you're never making fun of it. And I think that's the hard balance that some of these meta movies try to find. Scream does it. This movie does it. This is easily top 10. 6 is a good spot for it. I'm afraid Danny DeVito might not make the list, so if he's on it in at least a voice capacity, that's okay with me.
This was a first time watch for me as well, and I literally watched this today. I agree. Top 10. This is easily top 10. This is such a fun movie, and this was Arnold getting to be Arnold, but also getting to do his comedy shtick with everything too. So it was a really good blend with that. And mentioning Danny DeVito as the cartoon cat is really, it needs to be mentioned. Yeah. I also, the thing that I found funny is no, we're in a movie. Here, I'll prove it to you. Look, there's a cartoon cat. He's just on duty. The fact that he writes down the F word and just say this. It's I'm not going to say that. He looks so offended. I loved this. This was a surprising one. for me that I loved. So
Yep, I love it.
Do you guys have personal guilt knowing that this is the first and only time you guys have seen this film?
a little bit, yeah, actually.
Because this is one for me personally that's just been a great film that I've enjoyed it ever since it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be on my Arnold list of rewatch movies to rewatch constantly. Obviously, this is a
I was really
fantastic
surprised when I was looking at this movie because I didn't think that this would get brought up here, but I was looking at the Rotten Tomato score, which is the audience score is awful on this one, which is hilarious.
Because they're wrong.
This
Well,
has
yeah,
been a
it's been
controversial
wrong.
pick in the comments.
Yeah. What's that?
This has been a controversial pick in the comments.
Has it?
Yeah.
And that's what I was actually going to say. We should really point that this way because I'm curious to know what everybody's saying.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I will acknowledge, this is a movie that was not received well upon its release. A lot of people kind of had it out for Arnold, but also you have to keep in mind, this movie came out 1 week after Jurassic Park opened in theaters,
Oh,
and
okay.
it lost greatly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, as I mentioned, we might have a little bit more bias because we're like super movie obsessed, and a movie that like this that is super movie obsessed, is going to have a little bit more skew with us. But
Yeah.
just to say.
Yeah, I want to hear what everyone's saying about Last Action Hero. I wanted to hear what everyone was saying during this comment. This
The
part.
only
of it.
controversy
A lot of
I would have, it should
people-
be a little higher.
See, a lot of people think it should be lower. Yeah,
It's top 10 for me being not this high, but I don't.
yeah, I would say honestly, it's
One of my
kinda
favorite
top
movie
five for me.
soundtracks too.
And I will also have to agree with Travis that says he never agrees with Rotten Tomatoes.
No, yeah, and that's the only reason why I wanted to hear what everybody else said, is because the audience score. If people are disagreeing with us on this here, which is fine. Yeah. So.
We should have a movie that involves Harry Houdini as we're in a magic shop. Too.
Right.
Exactly. Justified.
That's right.
Boom.
Boom.
There you go. So if I'm doing my math correctly here, Last Action Hero for the 15 that we've discussed so far puts Arnold Schwarzenegger ahead by one.
And one.
By one.
Okay.
All right.
So yes, over the top.
It's just stroking his own hands.
That happened to
over
me.
here.
That was accidental. He'll be
I
back.
have 7 and 8.
Okay.
Over the top, Jingle All the Way, The Expendables, Rocky IV, The Sixth Day, Commando, Running Man, Cliffhanger, Predator, Nighthawks, True Lies, Rambo First Blood, Part 2. Can you get any longer of a
Rambo
title?
Blood.
Rambo Blood, Demolition Man, Total Recall, and Last Action Hero. And number 5 brings us Casey's next pick. Really? Just kidding. Number 5, Casey plays Terminator.
Terminator.
The original.
Yeah, this is one of the peak Arnold movies. This is. I saw Sam clicked on. I want to make sure he's running. Are you still running?
We're still
Okay.
running. I accidentally hit the lock button,
Okay.
but we're back.
All right, we're good. We're up. We're
Yes.
running.
Love you, Sam.
All right.
Thanks.
Don't touch buttons you're not supposed to.
Yep.
Terminator, 1984, directed and written by James Cameron, who was on a ton of drugs when he wrote this movie. But that is fine. Terminator, one of the best time travel movies of all time. It is it stars Arnold, obviously, as the T-800, who is sent back in time from the future, where the world has gone to shit. And so he is sent back in time to kill the mother of the Resistance, played by Linda Hamilton, who plays Sarah Connor. He is sent back in time to kill her. Also during that time in the future, the Resistance sends back Kyle Reese, who is sent back to protect Sarah Connor. So that is the basic setup of this movie. I first watched this in middle school or high school. I absolutely fell in love with it and have watched it multiple times since. Like I said, it's one of my favorite time travel movies. That's one of my favorite genres to look at. It has one of my favorite uses of time travel because when you think about it, young John Connor sends back his best friend Kyle Reese to protect his mom, but also to ensure that he is born, which is a really weird thing to think about if you think about it that way. I'm going to send my best friend back in time to bang my mom, so I'm born.
He really is a true leader.
He is a true leader. He makes the sacrifices we need to make. Yeah, Terminator has great practical effects still. One that does not hold up is Arnold's face towards the end of the movie. It's fine. It was 1984. It was a very low budget movie. Yeah, this is one of the best science fiction movies ever. It is also one of the best sci-fi slasher movies ever.
Yeah, I love this movie. I love the original Terminator. And I disagree with you on the practical effect part of it when you said that it doesn't hold up there. I think all of the effects have completely held up with that movie over time. I still to this day get a very cold chill down my spine when you see Arnold with part of his face ripped off and you see the inside of him right there with the red eye and everything like that. And when that's that first big reveal, it's so just steal that from Andy. It was so good, so good. Yeah, but
Yeah, love it. Movie. I love this movie. Not as good as the sequel, but yeah, I love that they sort of explain the plot on the run. There's no sitting down and explaining. Oh, this is gonna happen. Or this is what's gonna happen. Everything's done while Reese is trying to not. While he's trying to protect Sarah. He explains everything on the run. And I sort of love that whole thing. Schwarzenegger's a menacing villain. Was supposed to be O.J. Simpson, but Cameron didn't think he was a killer. So.
You had to go there.
So Schwarzenegger's the bad guy.
Yeah.
He's great. This is sort of
James Cameron.
This is sort of like the birth of the Arnold movie star. And this is an independent movie too. I think this was made for $6 or $7 million. So the police station scene is awesome.
Yes. Coins Arnold's catchphrase for all time.
Yeah. He says in 3 other movies, I think.
That's a couple.
Just a few extra.
Yeah, I mean, I personally in my life, I never saw this movie until well after I had seen T2, and so seeing that, and so seeing this, knowing what T2 was and realizing how much of that vision was captured in this original movie for the low budget that it was, I mean, it really speaks to how James Cameron was able to use that low budget to his advantage, and that's quite impressive. Again, because it's also low budget, it has to be a very tight movie, which I think is where you get a lot of that explaining on the run stuff. There's no time to be slow in this movie, especially when you're trying to portray Arnold as the threat that he is. It just works. And seeing this, you realize why James Cameron moved up the ranks in Hollywood as quickly as he did, because Aliens was just 2 years later, and just quantum leaps from there.
All right.
Yeah.
So that just keeps Schwarzenegger battling it out for the top spot here. All right. Number 4 is Casey's next pick, and your last one.
This is going here because I trust at least one of you on the table.
And no vetoes have yet been used. I am disappointed at this point. All right. Casey's number 4 is First Blood.
He's back.
Yeah.
I told you he was going to be
Rambo
back.
is back.
Yes, First Blood, one of the best Stallone movies. Perhaps his best performance. I think I'll make an argument and discards what my favorite overall performance is. Rambo. This is the introduction to John Rambo. He is a Vietnam vet who has returned home. He wanders into this small town and is confronted by the police and the police chief, played by Brian Dennehy. Which, I mean, we were talking Stallone baddies. This is up there with some of the best too, with Brian Dennehy.
So good.
He's so good. He is definitely not Tommy's dad in this movie. This is not the Rambo that we see earlier in this countdown in Rambo First Blood Part 2. It is very contained. It's set in this small town. It's him running through the forest, pretty much just trying to evade the police. He's not necessarily going after them until they start going after him. It's really a story about Vietnam vets coming back from the war and how they are treated. This is just one case of that. Stallone does the silence really well. He doesn't have a whole lot to say or do in this movie. Or he has a lot to do, but he doesn't have to do it by saying a whole lot. He's very silent, stoic, but everything he does is kind of his facial reactions and how he reacts to everybody else around him. Yeah, he's a cold-blooded killer, but he does it out of necessity, not out of hatred.
Mm-hmm. And I think for me with Rambo, I mean, aside from it being just this killer action movie, my favorite part of it is that you're right, he stays silent, but then he has this amazing monologue about what he's been through at the end.
Yep.
And it really brings home who this character is for me. And that it's just this giant crescendo to all this action into ending it with the amount of dialogue and his delivery really in that. I think that might be some of Stallone's best acting that we've seen, and so yeah, yes. I agree.
I think I'm gonna veto this.
Okay.
Yep. Veto.
Does that mean he wants it higher, or should I play another Rambo? I won't do that.
Thank you, Blake. I at least wanted somebody to play a veto. I'm just saying.
I've been pretty agreeable throughout this.
I know. Where's all the sweaty
I
fighting
don't
I was
disagree with
expecting?
anything that's been said. That's what I'll say.
Okay.
Then I trust you, and I will then play not another Rambo movie. Is it the right one? I hope so.
I don't know. You picked it.
Would you like?
Are we getting drag again? Yes, we are.
Okay, all right, just checking. All right, and I'm completely okay with this pick. I'm okay with this replacement. We are replacing First Blood with the Schwarzenegger.
No.
I know it's not Schwarzenegger. I know. I'm sorry. I'm screwing my own stuff up here.
Another slide.
Stallone, and Kurt Russell classic Tango and Cash.
Tango and Cash, yes. Stallone, Kurt Russell teaming up. There are two cops. One plays by the books, one does not. They don't like each other, but goddammit, they got to team up because they are framed for a crime they obviously did not commit. They have to then team up, escape prison, go their separate ways, come back together, team up again. I love Kurt Russell. I love Sylvester Stallone. This is everything it needs to be. From the looks I'm getting from the people outside, the chat does not like this. I don't care. This is an awesome movie. This gives us two of the best action stars of the '80s. I like that Kurt Russell is with Stallone, and they get a team up. And then, like I said, we get more drag because that's what this needs. Kurt Russell in drag. Tango and Cash, number 4.
I didn't think I would regret playing 6 Day in the bottom of this.
I myself personally would also like to point out Jack Palance as the villain is great.
Yes, he's great. Tango and Cash.
Tango. So good. I love this movie too. It's not personally. I wouldn't have put it as high as we coincidentally did. Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone have amazing chemistry in this movie. You legitimately believe that they hate each other at the beginning. You legitimately believe that they have become the best of friends at the end. Terry Hatcher as Stallone's sister in the movie is also great. A very, very young Terry Hatcher at that. I mean, she couldn't have been more than 20, 21, maybe. I really love, because this was just stereotypical action movies of the time, the zip lining scene.
Yes.
Of them like grabbing an electrical cord, and then take my belt off. Like when the whole time when I rewatched this recently, the whole time I was watching it, I was like, I don't mean to be that guy, but they don't let you have a belt in prison. And that's how old I became. And then everything that happens in prison, like when they're walking through the one wing, everything's on fire. I really do enjoy this movie. Again, I mean, it's just a coincidence that it landed where it did, I think.
Oh, this is a lot higher than I would probably have it, but that's just, this is the highest
for the sake of how we play it, yeah.
This is his Sound City.
No, this is not my Sound City.
But yeah, I'm okay.
Needs to
With
be
it.
on the
I'm okay
list.
with it. Yep, I'm not gonna veto this. Yep.
I can't veto this. It's a good movie.
You're what you saw.
It's a good movie. Yeah, it's a good movie. Well,
Yeah.
maybe my favorite Harold Faltermeyer score. They literally stole an entire action sequence from a Jackie Chan movie for the opening of this movie. There's a great sequence where they have like this big Jeep that is from the future. It seems like that's machine guns and everything. And they're just driving
There's
through
the
and
one
wrecking everything.
character
All the TVs.
who also like is making all this stuff for him. And,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
that
yeah.
character stole the show for me
Yeah.
the second time I watched this. Like,
This movie is about 10 spots too high, but I mean, it is what it is.
I kind of agree, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very ridiculous movie in the grand scheme of things. Just the whole concept of how Tango and Cash are these kind of celebrity cops, just the fact that they're always competing against who gets higher billing in the newspaper each day for the crimes that they stop. is
who's
kind of-
finding more drugs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or when they're in the prison, like, hey, I put half these guys away. I put the other half. Blah, blah, blah. You know, crazy stuff like that. It's kind of a miracle that this movie works because I don't know if you guys know the production history about this, but there are 3 directors on this movie and 2 directors of photography. The first guy was like the guy who did Runaway Train for Canon. He was fired and replaced with the guy who did Princess Purple Rain. And then he was replaced by the guy who did Rambo 3. It was a huge mess. Barry Sonnenfeld also got fired by Stallone as director of photography. Huge mess. They were like filming like right up until it was released. This is actually the last major movie release of the 80s. It came out like Christmas 1989. So kind of the end of an era in action, as it were, if you want to phrase it like that. I would also say this is too high, but these are literally the cards we've been dealt. So
Clint Howard allows it to be number 4.
And I would also like to point out that Andy's response is, have we learned nothing in vetoing Casey?
Blake hasn't.
2 countdowns in a row.
I have not learned anything.
I should have played
Alright.
Creed 2 instead.
Right.
Just wait.
Number 3, Charlie gets his last and final
Charlie.
pick.
Yeah.
oh boy.
I trust you.
Yeah.
All right.
At 3?
Yeah.
I don't trust these 2.
Yeah. It needs to be in this though.
So yes, we have Sylvester Stallone's Rocky at number 3.
The original.
The
Rocky.
original. Numero uno.
This is.
Too low.
I agree, but I don't trust these 2 when it comes to putting it in the top 2. Rocky is just in my eyes. I think there's no better storytelling for sports movies. Rocky Balboa is he lives on the mean streets of Philadelphia. Nobody's taking him seriously as a boxer. Can't get a pro fight, nothing like that. So he goes down to Tijuana to make money. He gets handpicked by Apollo Crews.
Apollo Creed.
I'm sorry, Apollo Crews. I'm sorry, pro wrestling guys. Saved my life.
Yes, we remember the
Apollo
recent.
Creed.
We remember the recent sequels, Cruise and Cruise 2.
Yeah. Sorry. I got a face palm from Derek. I feel terrible for that. Apollo Creed. Apollo Creed has handpicked Rocky to be his next fight. And at the end, Blake's not going to lose it. And then the love story with him and Adrian at the beginning of it. There's an awkward scene in Rocky that I don't think really holds up well with them in his apartment. But their whole love scene and the Adrian I did it, him going he didn't have to win the fight for him to win the fight, essentially. And that is just such a great story in my eyes. I think Rocky, in my eyes, is one of the greatest sports movies ever made, and it is my favorite of this entire list. It doesn't matter what else you guys pick. Rocky is going to be my favorite in this list. So
Yeah, Rocky is I'm with you, Charlie. We gushed about it a
Yeah.
lot on that Stallone episode. I will gush about it here. Rocky is not just one of the greatest sports movies ever. It's one of the greatest movies
Yeah.
ever. This is, I think in the last year I've come to the conclusion that Rocky is my favorite movie series ever. Star Wars was beforehand, then the last two movies came out. Last three. But Stallone and Rocky is a fascinating journey to watch. Because you look at Stallone in the first Rocky movie, that's very much reminiscent of Stallone's life at that time. No one was taking him seriously as an actor or writer. And you know what? He said, I'm going to write my own story this time. I'm going to make myself then the star. He does, and it's a hit. It's a massive hit. Wins Best Picture. We get a sequel, which is very much in the same tone as this movie, where, spoilers, in the sequel, Rocky does win. He wins the title from Apollo Crews.
But U.S. title, baby!
Yes. And then we get to Rocky 3 and 4, where it's kind of peak Stallone then. We're in the 80s. Stallone's on top of the world, so is Rocky. He's the heavyweight champion of the world. He's ending the Cold War. Then you get to Rocky 5, and it's back down. He's down to nothing. And that's kind of where Stallone is a little bit at that time, because this is the early 90s, and it's the end of the 80s for him. The end, really, of like the Rambo series. So he's in a very different place. And then when you get to Rocky Balboa, that's his comeback. Rocky's comeback and Stallone's comeback. And that leads us to him doing the Expendables and Rambo. And then the Creed movies, which are perfect movies to wrap everything up.
That ending in Creed 2 for Rocky was... Like, perfect. For me, like, I'm watching it and I'm in tears, like, watching it, because this is a character that I grew up with. And
Rocky is my favorite movie character ever, easily. Just the journey he takes from this movie to Creed 2, perfect from beginning to end, besides one street fight. But Rocky is one of my favorite movies ever. One of the best scores ever. It's such a simple score, and then you get the bombastic "Gonna Fly Now" during the training montage. I want to talk about that scene really quick that you were mentioning. Him and Adrian in his apartment.
Oh yeah.
So I rewatched it this morning. I think it still works.
You think so?
It is a little weird at first, but I think it fits the characters that those two are.
Yeah.
Both are very socially awkward. Rocky is a little more outgoing than Adrian, and he's kind of the one that has to push the relationship forward because he knows she won't.
Yeah.
And I get him like putting his arms up to not letting her out. That's the weird part.
That's the weird part.
But the fact that she embraces him is what makes it work then, because it's not she's pushing him away or anything. She's fully embracing what the kiss that he's about to give her. And I love the relationship with Rocky and Adrian, and the growth of him and Apollo as best friends later on in the series is great, and it's perfectly set up here.
The one scene, and I don't mean to interrupt you guys, but the one scene that I really want to mention is Rocky goes to the arena where he's going to fight, and they have the big banner of him, and he's wearing
the opposite color.
Yeah, he's wearing opposite color trunks, and he looked at somebody and said, and Rocky said, "Oh, this is I'm wearing white. That's not they need to change that." And he goes, "Oh, it's not like it's going to matter anyway." So that was actually improvised, because that was something that they had actually gotten those printed, and they were supposed to be white. That was a scene that was written on the spot with just those people. That was actually a misprint, and they used that in the story. And it's such it really fit really well in the whole story.
That's the thing Rocky's worried about.
Yeah,
he's not really worried about the fight, because at that point he just wants to go the distance.
Yep.
But the thing he's worried about is you guys don't have the right color trunks. It's not a vain thing. It's just the little thing Rocky would think about.
Yep.
Apollo would not care, and they would make sure they get it right if he did. But the fact that it's Rocky and he's the underdog, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, this set the template for sports movies for decades. Again, it's the only movie that we have here on our list that has actually won a Best Picture Oscar, and it is well deserved. What I keep coming back to is, this was such a big deal for some. This is the movie that really garners him a good, I'd say, 15 years of goodwill in Hollywood, just because of how disarming and appealing he is in this movie. You see it in all the small scene where, for example, when he's walking down the sidewalk early on with that girl and telling her not to smoke because her teeth will get yellow, or when he tries to coax the guy who's running the skating rink to let him skate for 10 minutes, just sort of like, how could you not be on this guy's side? And, and especially, when you get into like the 80s and you hear all these stories about Stallone, taking control of his movies and running amok and all that stuff, he kind of was able to get that way because, ultimately, his performance in this first Rocky, is just such, just one of the most cheery, inspirational, I mean, he had done movies before this, but, just in terms of really coming to prominence, and kind of setting the tone, for, what a good guy Stallone can be. So
Not the first time he was the Italian stallion.
It was. They changed the name of said movie after this happened.
I have nothing to add. I love this movie.
I would like to point out again, if I'm doing my math right, you guys have done a very good job that these two men are tied up and we only have two left.
Oh, wow.
I think it might remain that way.
So it's either going to lean real quick or it's going to be pretty much right to the end.
Well, here is the next.
Yeah, so Blake, you get number 2.
Junior?
All right, so number 2, Blake plays First Blood.
Yeah,
Oh, that looks familiar.
it's an incredible movie, as you guys said earlier. I want to echo the scene where I almost said Rocky. Rambo lays it all on the line. How he went off to war and fought a war that wasn't for him, and came back and was spit on, called the baby killer. And I love. It felt like Stallone at that point was sort of like speaking up for veterans of the Vietnam War. I can't say something like that because I wasn't there, obviously. But that's what it feels like. It feels like it was written to give sort of like a thank you for people who sacrificed, who didn't want to go. And I think it's probably the best acting Stallone's ever done. I'm sort of pissed that he didn't even get an Oscar nomination for it. But it's an incredible movie. It's the best movie of the series.
Yeah.
Easily.
I don't know what else I can say about it. It's an incredible.
We talked a lot
experience,
about it.
Mm-hmm.
This was my personal number 3, and so I'm 100% okay
My
with
hope
it.
going in was we flip-flopped Rocky and First Blood, but this is fine. I'm not going to argue against First
Yeah.
Blood. It's top 2 Stallone. It's easily one of his best
It's definitely top
performances.
1 Stallone. Yeah, you're right.
Nothing else to add about First Blood.
I will just add, again, it is a very sobering look at Vietnam veterans from the director of Weekend at Bernie's.
So that's right. That's a good way to play that.
Yeah.
All right, so number 1. So right now that gives us Sylvester Stallone with a little bit of the lead. Let's see what Derek gives us here for the very last one.
I'm going to count it down before we get to 1.
Counting on you for
Yeah.
kindergarten cop.
Nah, why would we want to do that? Fine, all right. So the last 19, we have Over the Top, Jingle All the Way, The Expendables, Rocky IV, The Sixth Day, Commando, The Running Man, Cliffhanger, Predator, and Nighthawks with the bottom 10. For the top 10, we've got True Lies, Rambo, First Blood, Part 2, got it right this time, Demolition Man, Total Recall, Last Action Hero, The First Terminator, Tango and Cash, The First Rocky, First Blood, and then our number 1, courtesy of Derek, is Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Yep.
Yep.
Because I didn't see that coming at all.
Right.
Yep, I think we all knew this was coming, but let's just recap it anyway. Arnold Schwarzenegger is once again the T-800, or AT-800 I should say, because obviously it's not the same as the first movie. But big twist, as this movie was supposed to reveal it as a twist, this time he's the good guy. And he is coming back from the future to protect the now teenaged or preteen John Connor, played by Edward Furlong, who at this point is is a latchkey kid in the foster system, kind of rebel, robbing ATMs, just doing whatever he wants, rebelling against his parents, Todd. Meanwhile, we cut to the insane asylum where Linda Hamilton, as Sarah Connor, has spent the past several years getting buff and talking at length about the future apocalypse to the belief of absolutely nobody. But that all changes because we also have the T-1000, played by Robert Patrick, coming into town to take out John Connor himself. And this is an advanced model with liquid metal capabilities that allows him to morph into other people and to also form knives and stabbing weapons with his hands. And thus began a big cat and mouse series of chases through the Galleria, all the way through to the offices of Cyberdyne Systems, where Miles Dyson, played by Joe Morton, is trying to create the technology that will indeed create Skynet. A lot of stuff going on here. It's a tricky way to kind of try and add more story to, what was originally a very tight time travel narrative, one that very much circled within itself, and I think for the most part, this works, while also still upping the ante in terms of things. I think we would very much easily say, that if he's not the best villain in this whole batch, that the T-1000 is certainly up there. It's an incredible physical performance by Robert Patrick, a man of few words, but one that just gives, those steely glances, it just says it all. It's menacing in and of itself. But then you've also got, Linda Hamilton, who's playing a much different Sarah Connor than she was in the first movie, and you absolutely believe what she's doing here. She's just become a total badass, and, it's an incredible transformation in its own right. Edward Furlong, doing fine work as the savior of the universe, John Connor. And of course, just the action sequences, which are just large scale. You got the chase through the viaducts, with the truck and the motorcycle. You've got the crazy insanity at Cyberdyne Systems with things blowing up. The escape from the asylum, which is intense as all get out. Especially the moment when Linda Hamilton sees Schwarzenegger and just freaks out. It's a great moment. And then, of course, the finale, going from Cyberdyne Systems to the freeway chase, the liquid nitrogen truck, and then into the steel mill. It's just an incredible build. The tension just never stops. And, of course, we also talk about the visual effects, which were revolutionary back in its day. How they, there are very few CGI shots in here.
Revolutionary stuff. Well, never happened.
I mean, and there isn't much CGI in here because there's still a lot of like Stan Winston work and stuff like that, but they know how to very sparingly use the CGI, for maximum effect, and it works, and it really helped usher in, the start of the CG revolution. So, there's, I'm sure there's plenty more that I'm missing, but I'll let you guys throw in, the praise that needs to happen here too.
Yeah, Terminator 2 Judgment Day is one of the, if not one of the best action movies, it's one of the best movies of all time. Mm-hmm. I think this and Die Hard are probably my two favorite action movies ever. It is literally non-stop. When we watched it earlier this year in theaters, I forgot how long the chase is at the end on with the liquid nitrogen truck, and then that leads into the steel mill at the end. I forgot how long that was, but it's never boring for how long it is. It's fantastic. This movie, like I said, it never stops. Has some of the greatest action scenes of all time. The chase with Arnold on the bike with young John Connor and the T-1000 in the semi is maybe the best action scene of all time. I love that chase. Of course, this features my favorite band of all time, Guns N' Roses, so that also helps a lot.
It also features a scene where Arnold Schwarzenegger has a gun and a box of roses.
And a box of roses, mm-hmm. Guns N' Roses. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Terminator 2 obviously should be on the top of this list. It is very worthy of being up here. It's the greatest Arnold movie. In my personal list, it's Rocky, Terminator 2. That's easily how I go. It's one of the best movies ever made.
Mm-hmm. I landed the same way with Rocky on top, Terminator 2 as number 2. But every time I would write down and like refigure my list, I would put a little arrow between because I'm 100% okay with Terminator 2 being on top of the list. Also, like them building some of the tense moments in the scene. When Sarah Connor stabs the bottle of liquid cleaner and then stabs it into the guy's neck as a threat because she hasn't quite pushed it into him yet. Like, still probably one of my biggest fears, and I don't know why, but that explains Sarah Connor as a character to me. I don't think that any other scene can explain Sarah Connor better than that moment in the film. And to what Derek said was that when you see Sarah for the first time in the film and she's flipped up her bed and she's doing pull-ups and Linda Hamilton is like got these rocking shoulders and like that is, I love that moment in there and how they opened up with Sarah Connor, and it didn't take long for you to realize and accept this is a completely different character than what it was in the original Terminator. So
Yeah, this is the greatest movie ever made. I mean, I think this proves that Arnold is a good actor. I mean, like, you could argue, like, he's not a great, but I think Arnold knows his limits as an actor, which is what I think Stallone, he doesn't know that, but that's neither here nor there. I think Stallone's, like, maybe the better filmmaker, actor, but I don't think he knows his limits where Schwarzenegger does. But I think this proves that this movie proves that Arnold is a great actor because he's able to dial down his persona to literally like mundane 2 or 3 word sentences, and he's able to do that entire thing through the whole way through the movie, and it's sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's a serious threat, but like it's always the same note, and I think that just speaks to how great he is in this movie. Gosh, I mean, once they go to Cyberdyne, the movie just clicks. I mean, we talked about True Lies earlier, or how like once Jamie Lee Curtis is kidnapped, the movie, hits like this peak. But like, boy, this thing like really hits once they get to. I mean, I guess you could say even Joe Morton's house, but gosh, I've seen this movie 50 or 60 times. It's never boring to me. I would put this up against anything, any day of the week.
No argument.
Yeah, and
It's one
this
of the
movie's
best.
incredible.
I based the Supercon line logo
Did
that
you?
we have off of the Skynet logo. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, the chemistry between Arnold and Eddie Furlong is really good in this movie. People
It
give
is.
him a lot of crap for his acting in this movie. I think he's good. His line delivery is a little funny, but I think that adds
He's a little whiny, but
to the charm of the
Do you guys know the deal with Eddie Furlong's dialogue? His voice cracked during production. So to make it fit from a continuity perspective, all his dialogue in the movie is ADR.
Oh.
So that's why I kind of give it a little bit of an excuse
Sure.
in terms of why it might
Sure.
sound a little bit awkward, because he's redubbing all of it. So
I didn't know that. So
number one.
Yeah.
Number one. It is number one.
it is. It made it.
I love this list.
I myself, I see it as number 1, but at the same time too, just the way you guys have, with this weird pick order that you guys had, we still have it at 50-50.
Yeah.
The way it should be.
That's
The way it should
So
be.
there's
Yeah.
really,
That's impressive.
exactly. I don't necessarily see, obviously Judgment Day is a great and fantastic movie, but I almost pretty much just see it as is that it's just a good, solid list.
Yeah, the comments are all pretty much in agreement. I did lead a little bit of a revolt. We want to retroactively, as an audience, veto Sixth Day and put in Kindergarten Cop. Yeah.
All in favor?
Well,
Should we go through?
it
some
was
of our,
written. So.
Let's go through some of our discards really quick.
Yeah, I had Expendables 3, my favorite one of the series. Conan the Barbarian, which is the first big Schwarzenegger, there's a scene at the beginning of Conan the Barbarian where it shows him as a kid, sort of like becoming who he is, and in a way, it's like it's like our introduction to like Schwarzenegger becoming this movie star. And I love that movie. I love the sequel more, but this is the better movie. Copland, I think is Stallone's probably overall maybe second best performance. I wish it was on the list. Cobra, which this is another one that I don't think it's
Yeah.
very good, but I think this is another Stallone mythical performance, like iconography type thing. And then Escape Plan, I really wish was on here. This movie is so great. It sort of takes, in my opinion, it's better than the Expendables in a way that you get old man Schwarzenegger and Stallone fighting together. And it's a lot of fun, and there's a sequence. Oh, we can't swear on this show, can we? Crap. Okay, I will tell that story off air. Yeah, I love Escape Plan.
Nice. I did have Kindergarten Cop on there, and I was tempted to play it where 6 Day was, but
Sam would have been happy.
Yeah, Sam would have been happy. But I wouldn't. I felt like if I was going to play Kindergarten Cop, it was just me fishing for somebody's veto, essentially.
Sounds like it.
It would have made it.
But it's the other ones that from when I was a kid, Judge Dredd was the first. Was the very first rated R movie I saw as a child. Nice. So it's and that one always holds a special place in my heart. It's not great, but it's a Stallone movie for that. I did end up watching a lot of really crappy films by these guys where they just don't have the acting chops.
It's funny, like Casey.
For some of them,
Casey sort of asked where he should start. I'm kind of like, well, I can't tell him what to watch because I'm just giving away what the list should be.
Right,
so I was like, I'm just gonna hold off, and you can watch all the crap you want.
Yeah, I ended up watching Avenging Angelo. That was
it's a slog to get through.
That was tough. There were some, and I will even say there were some moments where I laughed because it was so dark in that movie, Like
literally dark?
Yeah, so he's a bodyguard, and he kills a guy who's trying to kill the woman. And earlier in the movie, there's this big hole in the garage door wall, and because she drove through it.
Yeah.
And he just puts the body in there and puts concretes it up. And he kicks his feet in as she's coming into the garage. I'm like, okay.
And it's never mentioned
It's
again.
never mentioned again. There's just a dead body in the garage. That was so there were some really funny moments in that when I watched that. I don't even know. There was one on Netflix where Arnold Schwarzenegger's family died in a plane crash. Aftermath. I got through about the first 20 minutes and I turned it off just because that one was bad. But I would have. I feel bad for not playing Tango and Cash earlier. Is kind of where I'm at with where I'm at. So
am I.
But that's okay.
I'm okay. That
with
and
this.
Total Recall probably should be.
Yeah.
Swaps.
Yeah. I will stand by. I had a lot of fun watching 6 Day, and I will stand by that. If anybody ever wants to talk about it,
It makes me want to rewatch it.
It was fun. There were some really weird effects in it, some great prop work in the movie, and then there were some really crappy CGI. But I had a lot of fun watching it. I will stand by that. But
I'll start with my possible first picks. This is no way they would be ever higher than that. Escape Plan, which I think is my favorite team up between the two. I like it more than any of the Expendables. I thought about playing this instead of Jingle All the Way, which was Detox, aka I See You. It is Stallone in a slasher movie, directed by the director of I Know What You Did Last Summer.
oh, you're not even going to mention this one, are you? Oh God.
Batman and Robin. I just wrote I wrote it down. I wasn't going to play it. And then Rambo 2008 was a possibility. I love that movie. And then the DeVito Schwarzenegger movies, Junior and Twins. I think
You would have gotten Andy's vote with Twins.
I like.
Andy mentioned
Personally,
Twins
I
in the
like
comments.
Junior the most out of his Reitman movies, but is definitely the worst of those three.
Okay.
All right. I did have Kindergarten Cop in my list. To be perfectly honest, it was basically down between this and Last Action Hero for number 6. And to be honest, I really wanted to talk about Last Action Hero, so that's why I picked that. So,
Yeah. It was so
Conan the Barbarian. This is, again, as Blake said, it's the one that first sets the Arnold mythos. It also has James Earl Jones rocking one heck of a wig as the villain, who turns into a snake at one point. Great stuff. I did have Cobra on here. It has its ridiculous moments like Stallone cutting a pizza with scissors. And for those who didn't like Polly's robot in Rocky IV, get ready for the 5-minute sequence of Brigitte Nielsen modeling with robots. Stallone really must have had a thing with robots at this point. Yeah. I did have Escape Plan as well because I thought, what better movie to have on the list than the one where they actually teamed up. Had I not played Over the Top at the bottom, I probably would have played this just to get this on the list. And then I also had written just because these are the ones I watched Rocky 2 and Rocky 3. I'm guessing you guys came to the same conclusion. I never intended on putting a Creed movie on this list. I like those movies, but I don't consider them Stallone movies.
It's the first Creed is in. Oh, there it is. Yeah, this is my favorite Stallone performance ever. I think he's fantastic in Creed. But Rocky 4 was the one that landed, and that's fine with me. That was my other pick. So.
They've really passed that franchise on now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. He is top billed, but it doesn't feel to me. It doesn't have that same feel of a full blown Stallone movie. So. You know, that is Michael B. Jordan's franchise at this point. So
Yeah, and that's the exact reason why I didn't consider that. So, but yeah, that's all I got for realsies.
I did have Rocky 2 on mine as well. I really wanted Rocky 2. I'm okay with it was between Rocky 2 and Rocky 4, and I knew I was going to get rid of 2 if 4 got played. I knew I was going to get rid of 2 if 4 or
So basically, all the Rockies were in there. You're just based on how other people were playing.
Yeah,
If we had not had that rule of the 2 movies, I think I would have used all 5 picks on Rocky.
yeah.
I'm not kidding. Yeah.
I
Good
would
thing
have.
we put
That's
that
why
rule
that
in.
rule
Yes.
was put in.
Yeah. Yep. I
All
love
of them
Rocky.
probably would have made it between the 2 of us.
Yeah, probably. But anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'd say that says that we're done.
You want to run it down and send us out?
Send us out. Say these names a lot.
You took us in.
All right. Over the Top, Jingle All the Way, The Expendables, Rocky 4, The Sixth Day, Commando, The Running Man, Cliffhanger, Predator, Nighthawks, True Lies, Rambo, First Blood, Part 2, Demolition Man, Total Recall, Last Action Hero, Terminator, Tango Cash, Rocky, and First Blood, and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. That gives us a nice 50-50 equal on these two for the top 20. For Backlot 605, I want to thank Spellbound for allowing us to have the show here.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Definitely come check them out, 41st and Marion Road. Again, they're going to have shows in October here coming up. You can check out and get tickets online on Facebook here. Use Backlot promo code to get 20% off. And we look forward to doing this again. We don't know what we're going to be doing another top 24, but definitely keep an eye out and see what we got planned in the future.
Bye.
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 Bye, guys. Bye, Andy.